Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Ordinary Council meeting. Council acknowledges the traditional owners of these lands, waters and skies, the Wadawurrung people. We acknowledge and respect their continuing connections to their lands, waters, skies, culture and the contribution they make to the life and the spirit of our community here in the borough. We pay respect to their past and present elders and extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Mr. CEO, do we have any apologies? No? Thank you. Councillors, any conflict of interest? No? Officers? No? Sorry? I don't necessarily. Yep, understood. Thank you. Item 4, we have no councillors on leave of absence. That stage, I would welcome back Councillor Tolhurst from leave of absence and congratulations on this safe arrival of young Rock. Item 5, public question time status update. There are no questions outstanding. Public question, 5.2, public questions. We have received one public question tonight. And I will read that. It's from the QCA and I'll read that out. Public question 1 from QCA. The officer response in the appendix to the draft budget submissions to concerns with regard to the high staff and consultation costs on how council quantifies product savings states. The council operates on tight budgets and limited resources, making it impractical to manage all aspects of its operations internally in a cost-effective manner. Therefore, the council uses consultants as a cost-effective means to access expertise that it lacks in-house but needs on an ad hoc basis. In the question, in a tight operational budget setting, the QCA would be interested in a further explanation of the actual cost efficiencies as distinct from cost effectiveness, measures and assessments that council uses to ensure it's getting better value for money from these consultancies, given that many tenders are commercial in confidence and appear to constitute high levels of expenditure. Mr. CEO, would you like to respond to that?
Oh, thank you, Mayor, and through you. I think we'll take this question on notice and we'll send a response to the QCA.
Yeah, understanding it does require quite a bit of time responding. Thank you. We will continue. Item 6 is confirmation of previous meetings. 6.1, Ordinary Council meeting on 22nd of May. The recommendation that the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting on 22nd May 2024 as distributed be confirmed as an accurate record. Could I get someone to move that? Someone that was there? Move Councillor Minty, seconded. I'll second that. Thank you. All those in favour? So moved. Thank you. 6.2, Ordinary Council meeting on the 22nd of May 2024, confidential minutes. A copy of the previous confidential minutes from the Ordinary meeting of Council on 22nd May 2024 was distributed to councils under a separate cover. The recommendation that the confidential minutes of the Ordinary meeting of Council on the 22nd of May as distributed be confirmed as an accurate record. Can we get someone to move that? Thank you. Move Councillor Minty. Someone to second that one? I'm happy to second the confidential. All those in favour? Thank you, Councillor Grant. Item 7 is the record of informal meetings of councillors. The recommendation that the record of informal meetings of councillors as presented in adjunct to item 7 be noted. Can I get someone to move that recommendation? Thanks, Councillor Minty. Seconded. Happy to second that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Grigel, second that. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Notice of motion. Item 8, 8.1, notice of motion status update. There are no notices of motion outstanding. 8.2, motion on notice. There were no notices of motion received. 9, petitions and joint letters. None were received. Councillors, item 10 is the functions attended. You'll see the list there. It's quite a long list, so thank you for everyone who's been out and about in the community. The recommendation that the functions attended report be received. Is someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Minty. Someone to second that one, please. That. Councillor Ebbels. All those in favour? Thank you, Councillor Grout. Thank you. Item 11, Chief Executive Officer Report for June 2004. I'll hand over to the CEO. Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. And I'll take the report as read, but just to highlight, because we've got an open mic and potentially a streaming, that the Coastal Marine and Management Plan draft is on exhibition at the moment, and we'd be encouraging our community to have a look at that and provide us some feedback on that.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Do we have any questions for the CEO in regard to his report?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Grigard.
Regarding the Reflect Reconciliation Act plan, could you please explain the level of consultation with the community and the frequency, please?
Yeah, and through you, Mayor. So the Reflect Reconciliation Plan is a plan for the organisation. So it's, I think we've described it in the past as the council getting its house in order. And there's 4 stages to the reconciliation journey. And the second stage is the Innovate Wrap. And what we mentioned in my report there is that that's when we start our consultation with the community through that process. So the Reflect Wrap, we've got our house in order, we've made some commitments, and there's some work that we need to do to make sure that we're in a position then to, with some better understanding and some and even a bit more respect, go and speak to our community about the next stages of the reconciliation.
Is it too early to, or is that part of the work will happen about how and what that consultation will look like?
Yeah, so we'll come to council and start to do some planning for the innovation wrap, and in that planning we'll talk to you about what consultation will look like. Yep.
So it does say towards the end of the year. So would that be actually the new council? Do you think
yes, yeah, I think so. So this council, in the time that you have left, we'll be working on the Reflect Wrap and the implementation of the Reflect Wrap.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions for the CEO? No? No? No other questions? No? Thank you. Can I get someone to move that council receives the CEO officer report for June 2024? Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Someone to second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Minty. All those in favour? Thank you. So moved. Item 12, Health and Wellbeing, 12.1, Draft Access and Inclusion Plan. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'll take the report as read. The purpose of this report is to present the Draft Access and Inclusion Plan 2024 to 25 and seek Council support to place the document on public exhibition for community feedback for 1 month. It's as per the recommendation on page 18.
Thank you. The recommendation. Do we have someone to move the recommendation?
I'd like to propose an alternate motion that the policy be adopted as presented for the purpose of exhibition, but extend the period of consultation from July 5 to August 12. Just to add that extra week and bring it the subsequent Monday.
Yep. Can I get someone to second that new motion? Yep, seconded Councillor Minty. Would you like to speak or ask Tim any questions? Councillor Tolhurst is the mover.
I'd like to do both, thank you. So in the first instance, Tim, a question around the systems in place to ensure that the exhibition process and the opportunity to consult with our community is as accessible as possible, particularly for those living with a disability beyond those who are connected through the lived experience disability group. So just how will we facilitate essentially accessible consultation?
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Steve Ward is the officer who's leading this. He is currently on leave, but when he returns in July, he will organise that consultation with the communications team. And as he's been working closely with the lived experience disability group, I'm sure he will lend his mind to make sure there's the full inclusion for accessibility in terms of how people can access and contribute to the document communication.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Minty, you seconded that. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, thank you, Mayor. Look, my discussion is basically in relation to, or as a recommendation to all those people who are attending and to the all our ratepayers to have a look at the strategy, the discussion paper or the inclusion plan that we're putting out. I think it's been 18 months in the making. I think it is or has been put together with deep consultation with group who are looking for access, better access to their own community and to some of the opportunities that are on offer to every able-bodied person within the borough and visitors as well. I think it's something that we as a community should embrace as much as we possibly can. I think looking at the way that it's been put together, people have been extremely careful about what they're asking for, and I think it's something that is definitely worthwhile, and I would encourage anybody and everybody to read it and make comments on it, and please give us your support for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minty. Would anyone like, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Mayor. Just before you do take a vote, I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Tolhurst. You said the 5th of July to the 12th of August? Or was it the 15th?
15th.
15th of July to the 5th of August. Thank you for that clarification.
So you want to extend it?
Sorry, yeah, extend it then to the 12th.
12th, yeah. Thank you, sorry.
Happy to clarify that
That's
for
good, I
the
think so.
purposes of the minutes, which is that, yeah, the policy be adopted as presented with consultation to run from July 15 to August 12.
And sorry to do this to you, Councillor. Do you mind if we call it a plan in the
Inclusion
motion?
plan.
Thank you. We can call it the plan as it is presented. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome back, Councillor Tolhurst.
Sorry.
Would anyone like to speak against the motion? If no one's speaking against the motion, and under our governance rules, I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. So passed. Thank you very much. Can I just quickly add, off the record, just to thank the Live Disability Group who have been working tirelessly for quite some time here, to publicly thank them. It's been great, and there's obviously a lot of work for them to do yet as well. Thank you. Item 15, Heritage Planning and Infrastructure. Planning Permit Activity Report. Back to you, Tim.
On my feet.
Yep.
I take the report as read, Mayor and Councillors. It's the Planning Permit Activity Report up to the close of business on the 17th of June 2024. There's just one correction I'd like to make in relation to CQN 40 on page 29. The VCAT, sorry, the panel hearing for CQN 40, it reads the 1st of July. It should be the 8th of July.
Yeah. Some people may have that on page 30. I'm not too sure which, depending on what you're looking at, but we understand the change. Thank you, Tim. Councillor's going to get someone to, actually it's my portfolio. I'll move that the Planning Permit Activity Report be received. And can I get someone to second that? Thank you. Any questions for Tim? Councillor Minty, sorry. Yep. Any questions for Tim in regard to the planning report? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. So moved. And you're still here, Tim.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Item 15.2, Planning Application 2021-048, at 200 to 204 Point Lonsdale Road, Point Lonsdale. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. I would take the detailed report as read, and the purpose of this report is to present an assessment and recommendations for the planning application 2021/048 at 200 to 204 Point Lonsdale Road, Point Lonsdale. Following the planning review meeting on the 12th of June, which was the final opportunity for the parties to present to councillors, it's for the decision of council tonight as per the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Tim. And under my portfolio, I'm happy to move the recommendation as outlined before us, and I'll speak to that motion. Can I get someone to second that motion? Second, Councillor Tolhurst. Thank you. In moving this recommendation, this motion, you know, I know that it's been quite some time coming. It started in 2021. I know the applicant had to go through the Cultural Heritage Management Plan, which obviously delayed it coming back to council. We recently had the planning review, and I thought the planning review was excellent. I think councillors asked some good questions. There was good responses from the applicants and also some really good questions from the submitters. And when reading through the amended plans on the night, we were talking about, well, you know, some of the things that some of the submitters wanted to see. They wanted to assure that that would actually appear in the amended plans, with the making sure that this would happen. In actual fact, I know that we're talking about the upstairs roof decks, and I think, you know, I was surprised and happily surprised to see that the senior planner's recommendation is that actually reduced by a third the size of those desks, the decks, which is really good. Obviously, the landscape plan is very important for the area as well. Unfortunately, you know, I know a lot of people were questioning about fuel in the Borough of Queenscliff. There's not much we can actually stop that. There's obviously still another service station in the Narrows, and hopefully, if this goes ahead and in a few years' time, people will all move to the other service station and make sure that that one is well patronised and keeps the business going. So that's all I wanted to say. Councillor Tolhurst, you seconded the motion. Would you like to speak? No? Anyone? Sure.
So I just have a question to ask, and so red flags raised for me when I see not just 2 pages of conditions, but here we have 4.5 altogether in this recommendation. So I have not seen in the 4 years I've been on the council so many conditions attached to a planning application. So my question to you will be, you know, with this rather large number of conditions, who will monitor conditions? How will they monitor those conditions? And how would anybody who identifies something that's untoward actually raise that non-compliance?
Yeah, I might pass that question over to the
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I think the way the conditions are written, Councillor Grad, is that the majority of the conditions will be updated in a set of drawings that will need to be endorsed by council before the development can proceed. So we will have one set of documents that will have certainly the condition 1 and what's it, about 10 or 9 conditions there. They'll all be incorporated into a set of drawings, as will the landscape plan. And then following that, the other conditions are conditions that you would see on any development of this scale, especially where we need to determine through detailed planning what the volume of stormwater is coming off the building. And that'll be something that council needs to monitor, and council will need to approve that. And the Department of Transport and Planning, because they've asked for a condition, they'll ask council to monitor and plan that those road changes are in a line with the condition there. So council will have the significant role of monitoring the conditions, but the good thing about the way the conditions are written is that most of the work will be done before we even approve the endorsed drawings, so that we'll have one package to manage.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Tolhurst.
Just if council is aware of what the CHMP did require, if anything, of the applicant, noting that they provide guidance on activities before, during and after the activity to manage the Aboriginal heritage of the site.
So through you, Mayor, the CHMP has really given permission to disturb, and then in doing that has put a series of conditions about removing some of the artefacts that are on site, and the next steps are then between the Wadawurrung and the people doing the job, because they'll be replaced somewhere. Yep.
Councillor Gregor?
I'm just questioning one of the conditions, condition 12. So how do you expect, like, if there's a high possibility of the space being a cafe, and you'll be restricting requirement there's no smell, fumes, smoke, vapour, steams, actually, if there's exhaust fans. And also, you've actually, on item D, presence of vermin. How can you actually make a stipulation when in a natural environment on the coast, there's vermin everywhere? So how are you going to patrol that, and how can you enforce that condition?
So that's a condition that goes with most commercial developments, and in particular ones where it's been flagged that there'll be a food premises or a premises that manages food. So how will we monitor those? There'll be a combination of the environmental health officer, who will be making sure that as they do in their inspections annually, and sometimes even shorter periods, I'll be making sure that the conditions around that attract the presence of vermin are managed satisfactorily. And then the other conditions will rely on our local laws and our planning team to make sure that all meets. In terms of the emission of noise, artificial light, they'll all be within the EPA regulations, so it doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be no emissions. It just means that they need to be managed to our satisfaction, taking the guidance of the EPA regulations. So it's an unusual site, it's a mixed use, so you may expect, as we have throughout many of the inner suburbs of Melbourne, where you have those mixed uses, you just have to go a little bit above and beyond to manage especially noise, light and smell.
So will you be able to confirm that the residents will be able to have a barbecue, since you'll be saying smoke and vapour will be a consideration?
I'm sure you probably get some complaints about barbecue smoke, but I don't think that that's going to be an ongoing issue, and that will generally be dealt with through conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Sear. Any other further questions for Tim? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Item 15.3 is the Queenscliff Traffic Management Strategy, and welcome, Stu.
Good evening, Mayor Ebbels and councillors. The purpose of this report is to present the updated Queenscliff Traffic Management Strategy for adoption by Council. The QTMS takes a strategic view of the transport network within Queenscliff. The report includes commentary on the existing conditions and considers the key transport and safety issues across the road network, and outlines proposed projects and aspirations for the transport network within Queenscliff. The QTMS has consideration and strong linkages to Council's active transport strategy and considers relevant recommendations of the ATS. The strategy identifies opportunities for improvement and proposes potential future works. I think it's important to note the development of future projects associated with the recommendations of this strategy would each be subject to its own community stakeholder engagement process, appropriately tailored to the specific initiative being actioned, and also subject to the appropriate budgeting processes. The recommendation on page 46 of tonight's agenda is that Council adopts the Queenscliff Traffic Management Strategy as presented.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Can I get someone would like to move the recommendation? I'm happy to move that recommendation, sorry, and seconded Councillor Minty. Thank you. Councillors, would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Grant, did you want to speak to the motion? No? 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 So I know you're very keen on it. We had a good chat about it today, so I thought you may have wanted to
I've got a question. And the question really just goes on from the conversation we had today. Just if you can give us some clarity around the community engagement on this. So we've had consultation on the traffic management strategy itself. This is a strategy. There's a number of implementation, in the implementation plan, there's a number of proposals. What's going to be the process in terms of further community engagement on a series of proposals covering additional lighting in the borough, speed humps in various streets, changes to roundabouts in other streets? So what's the proposal for further community engagement on specific projects?
So for a start, the report has a list of priorities that would be probably seeking proactive progress on, and they're mainly centred around supporting existing speed limits in areas like adjacent to schools. So the process would be that we'd proactively seek budgets for those projects. We would develop some options and some material to be able to engage with community stakeholders. I guess the best example we've got currently happening is the Murray Road engagement process. So through that process, we've engaged with the community with a number of options and I guess delivered the recommendation with consideration to the feedback we've got through those processes.
Thank you, Stu. I was just going to, in talking to the motion, I was just pleased to see that after the consultation, there is quite a good list of, there's a summary of the proposed changes, which is provided below. So I think there's some good changes, and I think it's resultant of hearing back from the feedback about, the school zones, King Street zone. There's a few zones there, and also Jelly-Brand Street and the ferry. I think we're able to elaborate a bit more on those, which has been great to see. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Nope. Oh, sorry, Councillor Minty.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just an observation from the data that was collected by ratio, and it's something that we're going to have to be very careful of. Just in analysing the data that was collected to put this together, they're talking about traffic volumes, and from their own paperwork, the daily traffic volume of between 3,000 and 7,000 vehicles is considered acceptable for a high-order council road. Can I point out within the data that on a Saturday and a Sunday, we're already on Flinders Street up to near 10,000 motor vehicles. And that would be considerable, bearing in mind it probably splits off and then half goes down Hesse Street and half down Jelly-Brand to wherever it's heading. So I think what I'm saying is that the lower order roads will probably see an increase in traffic anyway for locals who find alternative routes through into their homes and their destinations other than the waterfront down there. And we're going to have to be cognizant that this is actually happening, and all I can see is growth in those volumes as we go forward. So I'd say that we may have to revisit the traffic management strategy based on slightly different volumes in the next 1 or 2 years. It should be highlighted for the next council. Thank you.
I think that's the benefit or highlight of living in an isthmus, so to speak, whereas it's one road in and one road out. But then that's why identifying a road like King Street, where, as the town does get busier, a street like King Street may actually have increased traffic. So identifying that we may need to do some work there in the future. I think it's really important. Thank you. I'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. So passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. Item 15.4 is the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve Project Update. Abby, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the Capital Works project Council is currently undertaking in the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve. The recommendation is that Council notes the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve project update for June 2024. As mentioned in the report, a PCG was held on Monday the 24th, which is after this report was prepared. So just way of update, at this meeting the PCG agreed on a revised project scope, prioritising works on the maintenance of the defence structures located at the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve. The PCG recommends that this revised scope be the basis of a funding variation request from DECA. The revised scope will be presented at the July ordinary meeting of Council for a formal decision to be made. Any questions?
I might get someone to move that we note the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve project first, and then we'll take any questions. Somebody move Councillor Tolhurst. Someone to second that one? Councillor Minty, thank you. Any questions for Abby? Or comments?
Just if the update as provided can be placed on the website, and the updates, I guess, consistently as we go forward, as presented to Council in these reports, be reflected on the website as well, if that's tenable.
Thank you. Any other questions for Abby? No?
Sorry, Mayor, yes,
sorry.
just the tool that's being used for this particular project and not, as I understand, used for all projects, which is basically the dashboard associated with
yep.
this, so that we can actually, it's a very good tool to give us, that is councillors and those who are interested in projects, a bit of a snapshot of where things are. And if I could encourage for newer projects cranking out, might be worthwhile adopting such a, if not this one, something very similar, because it could save a whole lot of discussion
Yes.
and questions, because the data would be readily available at people's fingertips, even online.
I'll pass that on to our project managers who prepare that for us.
Thank you, Abby. Any further questions for Abby? If not, no, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It passed. Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Abby.
Thanks.
Item 16, Governance and Finance, 16.1, Budget 2024-25, Financial Plan 2024-25 to 2032-33, and Revised Revenue and Rating Plan. Thank you, Gihan.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, at the council meeting held in April, council invited community to provide submission and feedback about the draft budget, draft financial plan and the revised revenue and rating plan. At the close of that public submission period, we received 10 public submissions, in addition to 5 submissions that we received during the pre-budget community consultation process. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the council to thank everyone who provided those submissions and the feedback about those draft document. And those input were very valuable for us to ensure that we have got our budget right within the available limited resources. Based on the submissions and other additional information we have received since we have presented draft budget and those draft documents, we have made some changes. And those changes are summarized on page 65 and 66 of this agenda paper. Additionally, we have added some additional wording to provide more clarity about some of the financial figures that we have presented in our final budget report. So overall, there are no any significant differences between the draft document that we presented in April when you compare with the final document that we have presented today. So there are no any significant changes. If you look at the final budget, based on the assumptions that we have stated in that final document, it is a break-even budget in terms of the ongoing underlying results. So what does that mean? Based on the current operating model, the council will generate sufficient ongoing operating income to cover its ongoing operating expenses. So that's what we call it's a break-even budget in terms of ongoing underlying results. In terms of the capital project, as we have stated, apart from the annual asset renewal allocation, we have not incorporated any specific capital project even in the final document. So this is not a reflection of a cash position of the council, because if you look at the final document, we transfer 580,000 from operating income to asset renewal reserve, which is a difference between what we are going to invest in asset and the annual depreciation. So if we had identified project, we could have used that 580,000 to do those projects. So it's nothing to do with the cash position. I think that is to acknowledge, yes, it's an election year, plus the resource challenges that we have in terms of managing the ongoing project. The budget, in terms of the cash basis, the budget, there's a surplus of $69,000 estimated surplus. So in the final document, that surplus has been transferred to general reserve, bringing the general reserve balance to 1.45 million. All of our reserves are cash backed. What does that mean? We have invested that money in term deposit to earn interest. So that means all of our reserves, what we see on our balance sheet, are cash backed. And again, as we can see, our balance sheet is debt free. Even in the final budget, there's no any proposal for us to raise any loans or debts. If you look at the financial plan, which shows the viability and the financial sustainability of council and how it will be achieved and maintained over next 10-year planning horizon. So again, as per the document, the final document, even on the ongoing basis, even if you use the local government's performance reporting framework based underlying measurement, the financial plan indicate it will be a break-even position based on the current operating model. And again, in the financial plan, we have not proposed for any new borrowing or even to sell any of the council's properties. Those things are not being factored into the financial plan that we have presented. In terms of the revised revenue and rating plan, the only significant change that we have made, we have removed tourist accommodation rating differential from our rating structure. So that's what we have incorporated into that plan. But anyway, that plan will be reviewed when we have the new council, because it's a requirement of the Act, that plan to be revisited every 4 years. So in summary, so that's a summary about those final document that has been presented today. Councillors, I think the recommendation is on page 62 and 63 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gihan. The recommendation is there. Councillors, anyone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Grigor. Thank you. Someone to second that? Councillor Tolhurst. Councillor Grigor, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Gihan, and the finance team and the management team for working hard to deliver a balanced budget. You know, it comes down to this year actually been very hard with blowing expenses on several staff costs, namely the building surveyor and stuff, and it was it's a shame that but do you foresee any similar expenditure increases similar to this year for maybe for the next council that we have not picked up, or we should really be considering?
Through you, Mayor. I think if I have understood your question correctly, Councillor Grigor, I think in terms of the building surveyor, so what we have factored into the budget, assuming we have a contractor, we will go out and then we will tender out, we will have a contract, so that's what we have factored in. So, and then we have adjusted for the CPI for ongoing basis. And the other thing which impacted the current year expenses is our outdoor service contract. And again, we have factored in the CPI. In addition to that, assuming when we have to renew such significant contract, there can be some cost escalation more than the CPI. So we have factored in another additional cost escalation into our financial plan. So based on those assumptions, based on the available information, we have considered some of those eventualities in preparing this final draft document. Again, as I mentioned, these documents have been prepared based on set of assumptions. All are clearly stated in those documents. But wherever possible, we have factored in some of those potential eventualities.
Because it appears from your graph regarding the trend in operating income in operating expenses that it would take very little to have the operating expenditure more than the operating income. So I'm saying that, we actually probably in the upcoming council, we'll actually have to be very careful and mindful of that and watch our finances.
So you may, yes, that's true, because as you correctly mentioned, I think you refer to the page 9 of the final budget. Yes, if you look at that, we don't have much of difference. There's no much difference between operating and operating expenses. So it's a very thin margin that we have. So I think, as I mentioned, if we continue with our current operating model, we can manage that challenge. We would have a sustainable financial position. But if we make some changes to significantly alter it, then we will have to revisit how it would impact our financial sustainability. But having said that, again, as we have mentioned on the page 9, that trend draft chart includes some of the projected one-off operating expenses as well. So that's another thing that you see. We have given some explanation in that page. So close to 140,000 worth of one-off operating expenses have been included in that chart. So it's not on. So I don't expect such thing to happen every year, but that's another thing we will have to take into consideration when you look at those charts.
Thank you.
Councillors, anyone else like to speak? Councillor Tolhurst, thank you.
Yes, thanks. Just to say that this, as you articulated, Gihan, is a responsible budget, a break-even budget, keeps the borough debt-free. I feel like I've said that every 3 years, which is a nice position to be in. It doesn't seek to borrow money. It appropriately funds asset maintenance and renewal, satisfies financial sustainability indicators, and rightly sets up a new council responsibly without an excessive amount of carryover projects, and one that's really observant of the challenging financial environment we're operating in, which is often felt most acutely by the state's smallest council. There's definitely been a focus on assets by council internally and the community, and I think this budget shows that we remain responsible custodians of them financially. The biggest expenditures, as Councillor Grigau pointed out, our outdoor services contract and the building surveyor position or services, though they do appear punishing to the council's bottom line, I think to look at this positively, the funding of these services enable us to do our job for community better and long term, and actually satisfy a lot of the feedback we received during the budget survey process. So I'm optimistic about what expenditure can do in these areas. Staff budgeting is also a source of community interest, and as it is a significant driver of operational expenditure. And I acknowledge that the staff have made sincere efforts to reduce excessive costs or to run things slimline, and I'm confident that what remains is in no way excessive and will support the delivery of our council plan and community's expectations of us. So I guess I thank you and very happy to endorse the budget as it's presented, to the finance team, to the comms team for exploring new and persistent ways to engage our community. And I think in the survey alone we had 10% or equivalent of our community responding and providing inputs to that, which is fabulous. Audit and Risk Committee for their review, community for submissions, and of course my colleagues for a long and engaged process, and often a challenging one in negotiating what's in and out as we try to deliver something fiscally responsible. I also reiterate for our community that policies exist for those experiencing financial hardship, and the opportunity for a confidential conversation about your circumstances with Council's rate officer exists for those that need to use it.
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Councillor Grant, you wish to speak to it?
I too am going to be supportive of this budget, but with a proviso. So, but first, I too will thank you and your team, Gihan, for working with us over a 6-month period to work through the issues in putting this budget together. I too am very pleased to see a break-even budget on the LGPRF measure. That's the local government measure, so it's good to see us get to break even in this budget. I'm disappointed that we can't actually do more, especially to invest in improvements in our assets, particularly some of the council facilities. I see the same sort of headwinds as my colleagues. The issues for the borough going forward include how are we going to pay for the public waste charges and comply with the state government's requirement to no longer hit up ratepayers for that. I can see the big increase in materials and services. We may not see it actually in the numbers in this particular budget document, because it looks like a drop of $1 million. But you've got to recognise that the Parks and Roads contract has had a significant increase. The waste charges have gone up really significantly, but all works that we do in the borough are significantly more expensive in terms of the materials and services. So any work that you see done now is costing more. Now, in those headwinds, we are in a rate-capped environment for income, and it seems to be much harder to get government grants. Now, I do see that there's a couple of opportunities in the next budget to improve our assets, and I mean improving our facilities, our buildings, our coasts, our parks and streets. And I think there's two things that I think we can focus on. And the first is a further review of the recurrent costs alluded to by Councillor Grigow. You can see that there's 5.37 million spent on employee costs. They're recurrent costs and they increase each year. By looking at these costs, we would need to do a review of the what each administration function does deliver and see if there are opportunity for savings in that. The savings there flow through to each subsequent budget. The second thing that I think we should be doing is exploring the opportunities to improve the income from our caravan parks. I've been pushing for this for the 4 years I've been on the council, and the installation of cabins just is very attractive in its return on investment, provided we do it properly. And I haven't seen any movement toward that, any significant movement toward that in the 4 years. I'm hoping that the next council will take that up. I think that the borough must do this before there's any further talk about applying for a rate increase above the cap, which is something that the previous council did, and I do remember writing a letter objecting to that. And I think any ratepayer here should object to that as the easy option. It is the easy option, but I think we should do those other two things before we even consider doing that. I will be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to simply congratulate Gihan and his team on the preparation of the budget. Bearing in mind this will be the third year we've been under a rate cap, or second year.
Longer.
2.75. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
the actual rate.
Yeah. So what's been forced upon us is so that we can obviously shine lights into corners and try and find any of the spare money, and then bring that forward and really run our business. And that in itself is not a bad thing, because we all get a bit lazy on the savings if there's enough money going around. So now that there's nothing left in the safe, we can probably we can then get on and deliver the services, hopefully, that we've been asked to do, and perhaps we'll get a little more support from people in other places. But having said that, I thank the team for putting together a great budget, a break-even budget, a budget that still sees us delivering priority projects and priority services to the citizenry. That's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Minty. Again, just a couple of quick ones. You talked about the our asset reserves and general reserves being in term deposit. The Murray Road money, is that in a term deposit?
That also in a term deficit.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have invested that money also in a term. In total, we have 8 million in our reserves. That entire 8 million we have invested in term
The 8
deficit.
million's in,
Yeah.
yep.
So
Okay, thank you.
as per our investment policy, we have put it with different financial institute to manage the risks return trade-off, but all have been invested.
Yeah. And you talked about removal of the tourism, the differential rate for properties. I'm assuming that's because the state government are going to bring in the Airbnb. Well, they talked about bringing in Airbnb tax, which hasn't eventuated in their new budget, so we're not too sure where that leaves. But if I guess it's for the new council to decide if that doesn't go ahead, whether or not we bring that differential rate back in. And the other one I was just going to mention or ask about oversight in regard to, so we have internal auditors, external and VARGO, is that correct?
Sorry, in terms of the budget?
Yeah, just in budget and finances, just to give our community some comfort knowing that there's lots of people looking at us and obviously, you know, we have to conform to what VARGO wants in regard to how we report as well.
So, thank you Mayor, for that question. If you look at the VARGO, our external auditors, they don't come and audit our budget because it's based on the assumptions. But what they do when they audit our financial statement, they compare actual against the budget, and they always ask explanations for significant variations. So if we have got budget wrong, that's where we will not be able to provide a proper explanation for our external auditors. So that will get highlighted in our annual report, because if you look at our annual report, there's a separate section where we had to provide commentaries. So then that can impact the audit opinion that the VARGO would issue. Right? So they don't directly audit the budget, but when they do the external audit, definitely they refer to the budget and see how we have managed our operation in line with the budget. Internal auditors, they do reviews based on what the Audit and Risk Committee would request. So they wouldn't again do audit on the numbers, because that's always based on the assumptions, so no one can give assurance on the such estimates. But now we are going to have an internal audit about our asset management process. So that will provide assurance, comfort for the council in terms of how we manage that part, because it has a significant impact on the budget. So there are some audits happening which will somewhat again give assurance about what we have included in the budget, the process that we have followed to bring those numbers into the budget.
Thank you, Gehan. If there's no further questions or anything else from Gehan, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gehan. 16.2, the Royal Park Oval Fencing Renewal Project. Thank you, Stu.
Thank you, Mayor Ebbels and councillors. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to access the Asset Replacement Reserve for the purpose of funding the renewal of Royal Park Oval fencing. I'll take the report as read. The recommendation is that council allocates the sum of up to $75,000 ex-GST from the Asset Replacement Reserve to fund the Royal Park Oval fencing renewal project.
Thank you, Stu. Would someone like to move?
I just have a question first. There's a question to Stuart. Can you please advise what community engagement other than the sporting clubs was conducted regarding this proposed fencing replacement?
We've engaged with the users, being the sporting clubs, both the cricket club and the football club, and that's the extent at this stage.
Well, what about the sort of surrounding residents and the houses around, saying if were they polled or actually considered?
No, given that it's a street renewal project, so replacing a fence with a fence on the same alignment, there's no deviation to the existing service provided. We've determined that there's no major impact to surrounding residents.
Would you have any concerns because we haven't passed the coastal management plan that it mightn't fit in with the outcomes of that, or even with the current coastal management plan? Have we considered that?
I don't have any concerns. The reason being is that the straight renewal of an asset that exists there doesn't require the consent process through the Marine and Coastal Act. It's completely consistent. Asset renewal is completely consistent with the principles that underpin the Coastal Marine Management Plan as well. So I'm quite comfortable in moving on a renewal of an existing asset.
And will we have to do a cultural heritage plan?
So
Would we have to do a cultural heritage study or plan to deliver this project? And if not, why?
So it's not required being an asset renewal, so it's replacing fence in the same location. It's low impact works that don't impact an area greater than the extent that's been disturbed by the existing fence. So it would certainly require a more detailed analysis of the cultural heritage impacts if we were to change the alignment of the fence.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you.
Any other further questions for Stu? Yep. Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst.
Thanks, Stu. I'm thrilled to see this in the agenda. I think it's great for the clubs and really overdue, so great to see that it's progressing with a scheduled delivery for Q2 of the next financial year. My question is just around how, if at all, the installation would impact park usage, given Q2 might take us to cricket season.
So we're confident that we can install before the cricket season, but as a risk management tool, we'll be replacing in sections, moving around the oval in sections.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions before we get someone to move that council allocates a sum of up to $75,000 ex-GST from the asset replacement reserve to fund the Royal Park Oval fencing renewal project? Can someone move? Councillor Tolhurst, someone to second that? Second, Councillor Grigale. Yes. Move Councillor Tolhurst, second Councillor Grigale. I was just going to add it also, I think we see that there's a bit of an ad hoc dog park does appear on that oval from time to time as well, which I think's a nice thing, but I think some of the owners of those dogs will be quite grateful to have the big holes in the fence not there anymore moving forward, and I'd probably add maybe Point Lonsdale Primary School would like to have not so many holes in the fence so the kids can't run away also, but who knows. But thank you. If no further questions, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Well done.
Thank you.
Item 16.3, annual plan. Mr. CEO.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, and through you, and given that we've just adopted the budget, happy to present this to the councillors. The annual plan sets out the projects and the programs that we are committing to undertake for the next financial year. We've prepared this year's annual plan, noting that we do have a council election in October, so we didn't want to overcommit projects that the new council wouldn't have a say in. So we've front-loaded the annual plan a little bit, so to recognise the end of the term, and we've picked up on those projects that we've been working on that need some further work, and that we'll continue to work on through the next year. So it's a fairly modest annual plan, but it certainly reflects the budget and certainly reflects the work that council's been doing over the last 12 months. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'll get someone to, if we move the recommendation that council adopts the annual plan 2024-25 as presented, and then we can take some questions if we want. Move, Councillor Grout.
I'll move it with a correction. We discussed this before in the meeting this afternoon. So I would suggest we change the wording rather than as presented with the following correction. So it's in Appendix 16.3.1. It's under Portfolio 2, which is the environment, which is on page 6 in that appendix. So change the wording from prepare vegetation management strategy to prepare vegetation management policy. And there is a difference between the policy and a strategy, and the 4-year plan that we have does commit us to developing a vegetation management policy, which we have begun to do. The strategies you would expect to come maybe later, and they would be more numerous and would require a lot more work.
Thank you, Councillor Grout, to move that. Can I get someone to second that with that change? Thanks you, Councillor Tolhurst. Would anyone like, Councillor Grout, would you like to speak further to the annual plan? No? Councillor Tolhurst?
I'd just like to ask some questions, and the first of which is that Bike Park Quarter 3 and Murray Road Traffic Management Q1 milestones are about seeking grant funding for these projects, and just a query as to whether we're confident that they align, that those milestones align with the availability of key grants that the borough and those projects might be eligible for.
Through you, Mayor, and certainly with the bike park, we are in conversations with Sport and Recreation Victoria about a grant program that they've got running at the moment, and the first round of grants were issued in July, I think, or this year. Are going to be issued in July, and then the second round commences early next year. So we've aligned those, and Stuart and the team are making sure that the design stages can be easily accommodated into a grant application, so we'll do that. With Murray Road, there's a bit of we're anticipating a couple of different potential funding opportunities. We'd be pleased to see the TAC funds that come out quite regularly, so we'll keep an eye on those. We think the timing will be all right. Otherwise, we're probably starting to head into federal election, and we'll be certainly lobbying hard for a continuation of the local community asset. Funds, because that's been a really valuable one for us. So we'll be doing that. Yeah, but we've tried as given the information we have today to try and align those. Yep.
Right. And the second question was just whether, and perhaps it's subject to further council decision or even a determination of the next council, but the review of the public toilet strategy, which is a document that takes us to 2025, whether that review will in fact become a sort of revision or draft of the document to take us to 2035.
Through you, Mayor, and Stuart will jump in if I make a mistake here. I think your logic is very sound. We will keep working with this council because we've done some good work in terms of the parameters of that review that we're undertaking, but the outcomes, I suspect, will inform the end of term. The end of strategy review as well.
Thank you. Any other further questions?
Question. With the development of the annual plan, were there any considerations given to any sort of past endorsed motions of council? For example, back in February 2019, a motion was passed by Councillor Pizzi and Salter that endorsed nominating the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Precinct road project in the future regional roads fixing roads program. That was highlighted back in there as like a score of 11, and it seems like that project has sort of just fallen off the bandwagon and forgotten. So it's like, what considerations of past motions are we taking into account when we develop this year's plan?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Grugao. It is a good question. There's two things relating to that particular project. One is that the funding that we were going to apply for no longer existed. So we did Hesse Street South with that particular fund, but we couldn't apply. The other thing I think that's influenced it and is the extensive work that we've been doing since 2019 on the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve Stage 1 and now Stage 2 development, and the priorities in terms of funding there through Stage 1 went to the P1 huts in response to the community, and Stage 2, as we've heard tonight, the PCGs decided to prioritise funding towards the defence structures. So it's not forgotten, it just seems to keep falling off the priority list, but it is something that's still on our radar. And just broadly to your question, we do have a register of all the motions that haven't been completed, I think is the right word, and Jackie and I look at that as part of our annual plan review. But that is one of the ones that does stand out.
I'm just saying, reviewing the draft sort of road repairs for the year, it actually doesn't at all appear on that list. So when would the people of Point Lonsdale would actually see the upgrade in that area for that road?
Well, I think at this point in time it would be following the approval of a Cultural Heritage Management Plan. That's an area of significant Aboriginal cultural sensitivity, and if we were going to do major roadworks in there, that'd be our first stage. At this point in time, we're still working towards finding some funding to do that sort of work, but it is it also, I guess, depends on where we land with what other development work we want to do on that site. In terms of car parking, the current stage initially through the landscaping plan did have some works around the car parking and upgrade of that, but that's fallen away through the PCG process.
Thank you. Any other questions for the CEO in regard to the annual plan? If not, no. Sorry, Jackie, remind me, did we get a mover and a seconder for that? We did? Yeah, thank you very much. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Item 16.4, Fair Access Policy. You, Mr. CEO?
It looks like it, yes. Yep. And thank you through you, Mayor, and just want to acknowledge that this is a policy that's been initiated by the state government and prepared by officers and reviewed recently by the councillors. At this stage, it's a policy that applies to us, but also the sporting clubs in the borough. And so the next stage for us will be to start to speak to those sporting clubs. We've done some preliminary consultation with them to get some feedback on the draft, but we'll now start to speak to them about what the obligations on council are, but also what the expectations are on those sporting clubs from the state government.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. I will just get someone to move the recommendation. Move Councillor Grugao, seconded Councillor Tolhurst. Any questions? Or
just saying, are we putting this out for consultation? Because you're saying it says you're putting it out to draft to the clubs, but the recommendation is the council adopts the policy of this fair access as presented. It's like, and really, I'll finish that first. If you could answer that, please.
Yeah, sorry if I said that we were putting it out for consultation. What I meant to say is that we put the draft out to the sporting clubs for feedback, and the next steps now is for us to go and speak to the clubs about the implementation of the council policy.
So, and would it be not considered, but it's actually true that without passing or implementing this policy, it's forced on council by the state government in Spring Street that if we did not have a policy under these guidelines, that we would not be allowed to be, we won't be eligible for any sporting grants?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gruyere. Certainly the advice we've received is that to be eligible for some of the sport and recreation grants that are available through the state government, we would need to have this policy adopted, and we would need to be seen to be working with the clubs to promote the principles of the policy.
And
Yes.
are they giving us any funding to actually administer and to monitor this policy?
Not at this point in time, Councillor Gruyere.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for, yes, Councillor Tolhurst?
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. Just as to the degree of feedback we've received so far from those 13 sports clubs engaged and the nature of it, a high level, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so at the moment we've only received feedback from 3 of the clubs, and the high level feedback has been that they understand it and they understand the intent and happy to work with us on the next stages.
But we will continue to engage the other clubs even though they haven't obviously provided feedback.
Yeah, that's an important part of the policy, yes.
Okay. Councillors, anyone else like to make? Yep, Councillor Minty.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just ask the CEO, it's a little unclear as to if there's a club that occupies by lease Crown land, would this policy then apply to them?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. Yes, so one of the reasons the responsibilities come to council to work with the clubs is because it really relates to those clubs that are working on Crown land. Yep. and generally under the management of council. That land is under the management of council.
Yes, good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, another question?
Yes, another question, Mayor Ebbels, if I may. I think it's great to see that this fair access policy, albeit coming with a state directive, does speak, and it's articulated in the draft how it links to our adopted gender equity access plan, providing more opportunities for women and girls in our community. But my question really is, when we do a regular review of both that document or plan and this policy, assuming it's adopted, part of what we've set out to do or committed to doing potentially is monitoring the progress by sporting orgs, and that struck me as a bit of a new space for councils to be actively monitoring sporting orgs. So whether any approach to that has been devised yet, or whether the state has provided any guidance on how councils might do this for particularly those for whom it's a new space.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. The state haven't provided any advice or templates, though they have indicated that once the councils have, as a collective, adopted the policy, that they may run some training on that. It is a new space for us in terms of being proactively seeking reporting from the sporting clubs, and I'm not sure how that's going to go, but that'll be something we need to do very carefully, because it's not about trying to make the clubs feel bad. It's about trying to promote access and support women and girls in our community. So I think most clubs will understand that, but yeah, it's a new space.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any other questions for the CEO? If not, no, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? So moved and unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Mr. CEO. 16.5 is review of council policies. Now I've got quite a few authors here, so who's going to speak to this, Mr. CEO?
I think Gihan's the best place to speak to the investment of available funds.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this agenda paper covers 2 policies. So one is about CP011, investment of available funds, and the other one is CP049, social media. So communication coordinator will talk to that policy. But I think the recommendation covers both policies. In summary, if you look at the investment, the policy in relation to the investment of available funds, I think earlier I mentioned we have close to 8.3 million estimated funds in our reserves. That plus we have some bit of extra operating cash, so all we have invested in term deposits. So that investment process is managed through this policy. The key change is now we have an agreement with the Treasury Corporation Victoria to tap into some of investment opportunities that they offer. As a result, now we can even place our operating cash on overnight deposit. Earlier we didn't have that option. So we even now earn closer to 4% on our operating cash daily basis through that arrangement. So even transfer fund in and out very easy with the Treasury Corporation Victoria. So it's a really good arrangement where we can really get a good return on even our operating cash. Yeah, so that's so those are the key changes that we have proposed into this policy just to factor in that arrangement now we have with Treasury Corporation Victoria. Over to you, McKenna.
I might just, while you got the microphone, we will sort of move them together, but maybe any questions for Guihan while he's got the microphone?
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I was going to put up an alternative motion to
Split? Yep. Oh,
They're two different sort of, it comes under the my portfolio, but they're really two distinct issues, so they actually should be split.
Yep. So there's Councillor Greer has moved the motion that they split the two policies, which is quite a reasonable thing to do. If we get, would someone happy to second that? Second, Councillor Minty, all those in favour? Thank you. So we will continue with CP011 investment of available funds. Any questions for Guihan? No? Can I get someone move that Council adopt the revised policy as presented for CP011 investment of available funds? I'll move that. Councillor Grigel, seconded. Councillor Minty, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. So moved. Thank you. Thank you, Guihan. CP049, social media. McKenna, who's been sitting quietly in the corner.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Tonight's policy for review, social media, CP049. It's come under review for its first time really since its inception in 2019. Essentially, the purpose for this is to update the policy so that we clearly define the rules and regulations around our official social media and the channels that we operate within. It serves as a reminder as why we have it, how it serves as a instrumental channel for us to engage and communicate with our community, as well as keeping updates across the board for those that are interested in all things that happen in the borough. Included in the policies, there's ideas centred around councillor use of social media and where that overlaps with their personal use and the more public use of our social media policies, so that it's a reminder that the rules that are set out provide councillors with guidance as to when that's appropriate use for social media and when it's not. You'll note in the papers the changes that have been made are minimal, and really it was just around updating the policy to current times. Given when it was first written, it was a new policy and actually was on the back of introducing social media as a communication channel for the borough. We've now had that running for 5 years, so really it's just about making it effective as to how we use it now. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, McKenna. I might just get someone to move and second it before we take some questions. Or yep, let's move by Councillor Tolhurst. Someone second, Councillor Minty. Councillor Tolhurst, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes. I think social media now is a communication channel or medium that's changing so fast you could probably update this policy every 6 months or 12 months and it'd be reasonable to respond to a radically shifting environment. My question is around, in the operation component of this proposed revision is a remark about council disclaiming responsibility and liability where inappropriate content is posted to its channels that can't be removed in a timely manner. And I just wondered whether that is legally sound, knowing, or it is a legal defence, I suppose, given that third-party content, the hosts of particular sites can be kind of accountable for the third-party content posted on their websites, and there's several legal cases about that, particularly about where content has ended up on a news network's social media pages in response to an article, for example. So whether or not councils would be exempt, I'm not sure, but just as to the legal robustness of an inclusion like that to council's protection.
Excellent question, Councillor Tolhurst. I would suggest yes. I will take it on notice so that I can find out the details, but I would suggest yes. And further to the comments that you made at the beginning of your question, it is such a fast-changing space that oftentimes, by the time these things are written out, there's some new way that something has landed, or whether there's been other ways of particular content being intercepted by third parties or shared and taken and re-edited, so that often that means that when we go back to what we can sit responsible with, might not be as clear as we might have liked it. So I'll take it on notice and I'll find that out for you, but I do feel that the answer is yes.
Thank you. Councillor Minty, did you want to speak?
Yes. Just in, I'll ask two-part question. Point 3.1, is that a major change to the existing policy?
No.
No, so that is the existing policy as we have it at the moment?
Yes, yeah. So there's a version in the papers that's got the track changes on it,
Yeah.
and you can see there where those edits are. So the changes that are made in 3.1 is essentially just adding that it also relates to the election period policy.
And, I suppose my other question then is, the 3.1 counts as a personal social media, presumably includes their own website if they have one.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, that whole 3.1 was in the original, and it's just that other little edit that's been made for this revision.
Okay.
Yes.
And, all right, no, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
McKenna, can I just ask in regard to, for example, where it's got other references, it actually references the Council Code of Conduct, which talks about, which I think a lot of the language in this policy is about, similar to Code of Conduct as well. But I'd imagine that at the moment the state government are working through legislation to change and have a unified Code of Conduct. So I imagine, like you're saying, social media is changing quickly, but the state government potentially, sounds like they will bring in a new Code of Conduct. So then this would then need to come back to the new council. I presume you'd want to bring this back to the new council once we've had a look at the new Code of Conduct.
That would make perfect sense. If there were changes that were to happen from the state government that would indeed influence or inform this policy, we would look at reviewing and making those changes so it aligns.
And policies, we can review them whenever, can't we? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for?
Yes, McKenna, just checking, have you ever considered the unintended consequences of this policy regarding freedom of speech? You're coming down to, on point 1, 2, 3, at the fourth point, all posts or comments created by councillors to the on their public page should be consistent with the position agreed upon council. But, if you actually put it on your own council, it's a form of gag, so in saying that, you can put it on, and then you have to say it's your own personal opinion. Of course it's going to be your own personal opinion if it's on your own page, but then you're put up on you're threatened with a code of conduct regarding this policy. It's very contradictory. I think the other councillors, see it as quite benign, but they actually probably haven't considered the unintended consequences, especially when, there's a block of councils that just want to push through their agenda and the dissenting councillors just can't push their point across because they're threatened with, a code of conduct regarding, getting the message out on social media or on any form. So how's that negated, with freedom of speech?
I think we just take that as a comment, McKenna. I don't think we're not here to debate with you.
I think it's about the language and how you go about. You may have a point of difference, but you still need to be respectful to your fellow councillors, obviously hopefully to the general public as well as council officers as well.
I'm addressing that, we put up a policy and saying, how does it, when redrafting it, was any consideration of, of freedom of speech on this policy to give councillors who are elected officials to actually voice the opinions of themselves and other people in the community for them, without actually having a code of conduct brought against them.
Thank you, Councillor Krieger. Any other comments, questions?
Question. There was a question.
What was the question?
The question was it considered when reviewing this social media policy, freedom of speech was considered when you have a council motion that's passed and you have dissenting councillors that have wanting to voice their opinions on behalf of their community, and then not being put up against a code of conduct for violating this social media policy.
Through you. We didn't consider that because you have every right, as long as you distinguish and make it clear that it's not the view of council, to put your own views up there, Councillor Grigau. This is simply saying that if councillors have come to a decision, a council decision, noting that councillors only have a vote, they don't make decisions, they only have a vote, council makes decisions, that you should be consistent with that decision if you're speaking about that decision. As an individual, if you distinguish yourself from it being a council viewpoint, you can say whatever the hell you want.
Still being respectful. Yeah, thank you.
With respect, Mayor. Yeah.
But we have already defamation laws. We have, I think we're going far beyond the reach of current laws, and we just.
I think the question's been answered, Councillor Grigau. So with that, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And against? Thank you. So passed.
Thank you.
Item 17, signing and sealing of documents. There are no reports to consider. Item 18, questions without notice. 18.1, questions without notice status update. There are no questions without notice are outstanding. 18.2, questions without notice. Councillors, do we have any questions without notice? Yeah, Councillor Tolhurst.
Thank you, Mayor Ebbels. It may be one that needs to be taken on notice, but gender impact assessments form part of the process of presenting any report to councillors. How many approximately, or on what percentage of reports are we undertaking these?
I will have to take that on notice, Councillor Tolhurst, but certainly the reports themselves have a prompt about whether or not the gender impact assessment is required. So there's that initial undertaking, but recently we've been doing some further training. So we've done a gender impact assessment for the bike park, for instance. We're going to do one for any plan that we come to you with around Go Lightly, but in terms of details, I have to come back to you on that one.
That's great. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Any further questions for the CEO?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Grigau.
Last month, I missed the meeting, but I've got to ask. Last month saw the usual Ibert Holbert Day, and council raised the rainbow flag on the flagpole in the borough. I asked the same question last year, and I'll ask the same question this year. What has the council done for the LGBTQ+ community here in the borough in the past 12 months to raise the flag?
Do you want to take that on notice?
I'll take that one on notice.
Yes, thank you.
So it should be simple. Have we developed any policies, or we've given anything like last year's reply was that you did some council staff training, sort of how we progressed it in the past year.
As the CEO mentioned, said he'll take that on notice and we'll bring that back, and obviously that would appear in the next month's agenda. Thank you. Any further questions? No, thank you very much. Item 19, list of council meetings. Council listening post for just those of interest, we've moved that back 2 weeks, same time, same location, and the ordinary meeting of council will be on the 24th of July. Item 20, the recommendation that in accordance with Section 66(1) and 66(2)A of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting be closed to the members of the public for the consideration of the following confidential items. 20.1 Roads, Parks and Reserves Maintenance Contract 2023-01, which I think that would be 31, would it? Oh, yep. 20.2 Curbside Organics Garden Organic Fogo Receival and Processing Services Contract 2024-03, 20.3 Receival and Processing of Commingled Recyclables Contract 2003-10, and 20.4 CEO Employment Contract 2024. Could I get someone to move that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Someone to second that? Councillor Minty. All those in favour? Thank you. Councillor Grigger. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone in the gallery for tonight's attendance.